There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that?
I promise you we'll be able to do it.
Someone blew up Russia's Nord Stream pipeline.
I mean, we'd have to conclude without the evidence that it's most likely
Russian sabotage on its own infrastructure.
It's a common sense matter.
I think it's Putin's way of sending a message.
What Putin is saying to us by blowing up his pipeline is, look, I can blow up a pipeline.
Everyone knows that Putin did this himself.
It's the closest thing to a smoking gun without the direct proof.
Yeah, I think logic and common sense will tell you that
without the evidence,
Russia was behind the incident.
We can say it for sure.
Who sabotaged the Nord Stream 2 pipeline?
The Russians.
I love the certainty and I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, there's exactly one country on that list of suspects, Brad, and Russia would be it.
It's hard to imagine others with a significant motive, but
we will bring an end to it.
Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Who did it? What a mystery.
One way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
But it remains unclear who could have been behind the Nord Stream pipeline leaks.
Make explicitly clear to anyone involved with constructing this pipeline that the consequences of doing so are catastrophic.
Who would do such a thing like this? I mean,
that offers tremendous strategic opportunity.
We still don't know who caused damage to the natural gas pipelines.
The U.S. Secretary of State warned against the pipeline.
The Nord Stream pipeline mystery continues.
U.S. says they'll do everything to stop the Nord Stream pipeline.
We do everything we can.
Then I have no idea who is responsible.
Kill Nord Stream 2 now.
Put an end to it.
Use all the tools available.
Stop the Nord Stream 2.
And let it rust beneath the waves of the Baltic.
It's almost inconceivable to think that the U.S. would do it.
A member of European Parliament publicly thanked the U.S. for blowing up the pipelines.
This pipeline must be stopped.
Who would do that and why?
According to U.S. government think tank Rand Corp, the first step to weaken Russia is to stop Nord Stream 2.
So it's a real mystery.
Halt Nord Stream 2 to stop Russia.
Shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Stopping the Nord Stream.
Take out Nord Stream 2 forever.
Permanently.
Ending it permanently.
End it once and for all.
U.S. must take immediate steps to terminate Nord Stream.
Should cancel the Nord Stream pipeline.
Absolutely. We should cut it off.
We must stop this Nord Stream.
We have made clear to the Russians that that pipeline is at risk if they move further into Ukraine. We can't find anybody who'd be the obvious culprit in all of this.
When it comes to Nord Stream 2, the pipeline that would bring natural gas from Russia to Germany, it will not happen. It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies.
I want to bring in former CIA Director John Brennan.
Russia is certainly the most likely suspect.
Russia is certainly the likeliest suspect.
Russia is most likely behind this.
Russia is the likely cause of it.
Likelihood that Russia is behind the attacks.
Very likely. Russian.
Likely Russian.
It is likely that this is an act by Russia.
The most likely thing is in fact the most likely thing. Russia.
The most likely suspect at this point, according to many, is Russia.
I've heard people I trust saying that it's just probably Russia.
Vladimir Putin, the most likely.
Russia is likely to blame.
I mean, that's totally something Putin would do and then go blame it on someone else.
Potentially a scenario of cutting off your nose to spite your face here.
Why would Russia bomb its own pipeline? It doesn't seem to make sense if you're thinking in a rational actor scenario, but
experts agree that Russia is the key suspect.
Experts say Russia.
Experts point the finger at Russia.
Experts pointing their finger at Russia.
European leaders are pointing the finger at Russia.
And all fingers pointing at Vladimir Putin.
Pointing the finger at Moscow.
Pointing the finger at Russia.
The Occam's razor points to Russia.
Most logical points to Russia.
German lawmakers point the finger at Russia. Spain points the finger at Russia.
All signs point to Russia.
Signs point to Russia, and Russia.
Still kind of seems to me like Occam's razor does still point to Russia's involvement.
Russia is a prime suspect.
Putin, the prime suspect.
This is a not-so-subtle message from the Russians.
Russian sabotage.
Russian sabotage.
What's happening here is Russian sabotage.
sabotage by the Russians.
Sabotage by the Russians.
More stable rhetoric, more intimidation from the Russians.
It certainly is.
While NATO does not call out Russia by name for being behind the attack.
Looks like it could have had Russia behind it.
Looks like it was a Russian attack.
The attack is right out of Putin's playbook.
Putin's playbook. Putin's playbook.
Sabotage sounds very part of his playbook.
It's essentially owned by the Russians and a Russian company. It'd be hard to protect against self-sabotage.
The assessment is Russia was behind it.
The destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, I would bet, was a U.S.
action. What evidence do you have of that? Well, first of all, there's direct radar evidence. Hey, Jeff, we got to stop there. They have to leave it there.
Only Russia could be behind the Nord Stream pipeline leaks. Only one answer, Russia!
And certainly the suspicions have got to be Russia who's doing this.
Gotta be. Obviously Russia.
The obvious explanation that this was done by Russia.
It's pretty obvious this is a Russian sabotage operation.
Russia says, oh, we had nothing to do with this, but come on.
It was probably Russia that blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Oh, I think it did. I'm 99% certain of it.
Everything that I'm reading and sensing is that
Russia did it.
Russian or Russian forces. So
Russia has done what it frequently does when it is responsible for something, which is make accusations that it was really someone else who did it.
Russian sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline marks a point of no return.
Poland's prime minister called this the next stage in Russia's war escalation.
Putin trying to incite an attack on Russia.
Vladimir Putin is trying to coax NATO into this conflict.
The explosions that we saw in the Baltic with Nord Stream 1 and 2, that would be an escalation.
No, I'm serious. He's looking for an excuse to escalate.
Could be the latest excuse for Putin to escalate his attacks.
The pipeline leaks will change the course of this war.
This could be one of the most impactful global events of the year, if not of many years.
The response to this sabotage leads us down a very potential dark path, especially one that involves nuclear weapons.
NATO says it will retaliate for any attacks on the critical infrastructure of member countries.
The Nord Stream pipeline, if that is a Russian attack, does that count as an attack on a NATO nation?
Any deliberate attack on critical NATO infrastructure will be met with a firm and united response from NATO.
That could mark a new and serious escalation.
NATO may have to respond to this. So potentially, we are looking at NATO making some kind of pointed response other than a strongly worded statement to Russia for an attack on what is basically European infrastructure.
There was some optimism that maybe the war in Ukraine would be tamping down. Is there any optimism now?
I'm not optimistic about that.
The gas leak in the Nord Stream pipeline has fundamentally changed the nature of the war in Ukraine.
He seems to be laying the groundwork for the potential use of nuclear weapons on the battlefield. So maybe a week ago we would have said there's a 10% chance. I think we're probably closer to 25% chance.
That's certainly an alarming escalation there.
Yeah. I believe it was the Russians.
Fascinating.